Woo, sorry for the delay. So sorry for the delay. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited for another week of the Pay Me What You Owe series. This week, we are talking entry-level professionals. Entry-level. So, everyone has their own categorizations of what entry-level consists of. From my understanding, entry-level can consist of being 1 year to 1 year to maybe 3 years. Seems like entry level to me. So before we get started, before people come in and Kennedi gets on, I'm going to go over a few housekeeping rules. Of course, the series is inspired by my song, Pay Me What You Owe, which is on all streaming platforms. And pretty much what the title says is basically talking about wanting to get paid what you're worth. And it was inspired by my work experience and going through those hurdles that come with post-grad life. I've had a few interviews since then. I've been on a podcast called pqALT podcast, another one called The Culture University, another one called The Glow Project, and I just did another interview just last week, basically talking about the whole concept of Pay Me What You Owe and, just talking about my experience. So definitely check those out. I think the link is in my bio to listen to those podcast interviews that I was a part of. You get to learn more about me, and they're really informative regarding who I am as an artist, as a person, and the inspiration behind this whole thing. Hello, everyone. Hello. I'm just waiting for Kennedi to come on, and as we wait, like I said, music's on all streaming platforms. You can check my bio for my interviews. And I'm really excited for my guest today, Miss Kennedi Fuller. This girl, oh my goodness, just like an angel. I feel like I've been so lucky to come across Black women who have been able to provide guidance or assurance or, just provide moral support in my career thus far. Who have been able to provide moral support in my career this far. And I think Kennedi was probably one of the first people I got in contact with, or who I met. Because if you don't know already, I majored in public relations in college, and I had a bunch of internships before I got my first real full-time gig, and they were all in the PR industry. And I pretty much met Kennedi just on LinkedIn. She worked at a position that I was about to enter in. So I just hit her up and we were talking, and I got to know her so well, and she's really been such a good resource more than anything. Even now, even though I'm here pursuing my musical aspirations, she's been like a rock in terms of if I need advice on my career, or if I wasn't having a good day on the job, what should I do to maneuver forward, or how do I deal with these situations? She just always had the right answer. So I'm really excited to talk to her because she does a bunch of stuff, and she's a grad student, freelance publicist. She's pretty experienced. I think she might only have maybe 1 year. She graduated a year before me. So I'm excited to get her on. There we go. Perfect. Was just talking about you, Kennedi, and how important you were and are to my life and my career thus far. So just hit, I think, the request button. I think the request button should probably come up towards the top for you. And then we can get into it. I'm so excited to have you on, girl. Oh, I think I got it. All right, we're about to get Miss Kennedi Fuller.
Oh, hey.
Yeah.
This is my first time on live, so wow.
Is it?
It is. I never go live, but here we are.
Oh
first time for everything.
I literally never did lives before this, but thank you so much for
Of
being
course.
the guest. I just want you to introduce yourself. I kind of already talked a little bit about you. Like I said, just saying how important you were to like my post-grad career. So like you introduce yourself, let them know who you are, your claim to fame, and why you are the ultimate superstar.
Yeah, so I am Kennedi. I am currently in grad school right now at NYU, studying integrated marketing. But prior to that, I did my undergrad at Howard University. Whoop, whoop, shout out to Howard. And then my major was public relations. So from there, I went straight into the industry. In New York, I worked at Effect Strategies, which is how I know Natalie, because that's how we got such a close bond. So yeah, I worked there, which was my first role in the PR industry. And then from there, I've just gone on to do other work at different agencies and just gotten so much experience within. This will be my, I guess, fourth year. So I'm like transitioning kind of from the like entry almost to like mid, like I'm like right on the cusp where it goes to that mid-level. So that's an interesting space to be in, but it's cool.
Yes, and we're going to talk all about it. So with that, first I want to get into like coronavirus time period. How has that been for you? Being a grad student, I'm sure there was a lot of transitional things happening and things changing. So how has this coronavirus period kind of impacted you professionally and as a student?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, this was only like my second semester of grad school. So I was just starting to get the hang of it, and I was just starting to go actually full time because last semester I worked full time and went to school part time. So this semester I decided to flip it around and go to school full time and work part time. But in the middle of that, it kind of got cut in half. And then I think like the second week of March, they started saying, hey, don't come in anymore. Like we're going to transition everything to Zoom. And so that's what we did. And that was definitely challenging, I would say, just because in the type of classes I had, it's a marketing. So we had to always be working on campaigns as a group. So trying to get everyone to meet, and we had to, one of my classes, we had a presentation every week that we had to prepare with the group. So trying to get group work done via Zoom. People are not only in different states, but in different countries. So we're trying to like coordinate everyone to like meet for an hour, 2 hours, just so we can, have our presentation ready. That was definitely challenging because all of my classes had like group work. So that part was, the scheduling factor was annoying a little bit, but I mean, in the end, it definitely worked out. And I guess it, kind of was a foresight to where we're going to be now with having to meet virtually for pretty much everything. So it was definitely a transition, I'd say, but I ended up coming home to Texas. So I'm in Texas right now. And because my mom was like, get out of New York. New York is too crazy. So just come home. It was so much. It was the epicenter. And now Texas, Houston is the epicenter. So I'm about to go back to New York. But I definitely would say now being home, I've been able to really just enjoy, kind of take a step back. I like go out in the backyard and like drink my coffee. I've just been able to have that live a different way than I would in New York in my little apartment. And then, I also, so I'm very, I'm a fitness enthusiast. So I started teaching workout classes, which was so much fun. I actually miss it. I think I might bring it back again. But I started teaching workout classes, which was such a great experience. I think just for me to share my passion and help other people work out. I mean, I love to do it and I was going to do it by myself anyway. So I was like, why not help, my friends and family get into it? Because I know if I wouldn't have been working out every day, I would have been eating chips every day. So I was like, let me, get it together. But it's been definitely helpful for me to clear my mind and, not focus on everything that's going on the news. Yeah, for sure.
And two questions I'm kind of curious about to follow up on that. Someone asked me this recently, but do you think one that like, if there wasn't this like quarantine period, like you would still be doing things such as like teaching fitness classes that like this is the first time you're doing? Like, do you think you would still be growing and dealing with the same things if there wasn't this quarantine period?
Oh, definitely not, girl. I would have been in New York. Like, it would have been a whole different situation. But being home has just kind of allowed me to really like, and I've been saying this a lot, just to like get back to my roots, I would say, you know, and find the things that are important to me. I've been meditating so much more and like really just making it like a part of my day every day and being intentional about it, you know. So it's been really like, such a good feeling to be at home. I mean, it's been 4 months of me being at home, and I don't live here, so it's been a time for me to just bond with my mom, my grandma. I got to garden and plant with my grandma, which is something I've never gotten to do. So I definitely just cherish that time. I spent a lot of time with my aunt and my little cousin, and just learning about him. You know, so it was just a good time to really like be with my family, which being away from home and living in New York, I don't get that time, you know, and I'm there like 10, 12 months, you know, the whole year. So to be home for this extended like period of time was really a blessing. So I've just been grateful for it.
That is so beautiful. I love that. And regarding like your schedule switch, I'm wondering when you were originally working full time and going to school part time, what made you want to switch to going to school full time and then doing part time work?
Yeah, well, I found myself, so I was working full time and then I was only taking 2 classes. Luckily, and the way New York is set up, like I was able to just hop on the train and from work and go to school and be there within like 10, 15 minutes if I'm hustling, like if I'm like zooming on the train. Um, but I mean, it got to a point where I think I was started to get more excited about class than I was about work, you know, and I was starting to get more excited about what I was doing in class and just like meeting my teachers and, you know, speaking with the students and just like getting to learn. I like found that I fell in love with learning again. And like, I've always been a learner, but like, I feel like after I had worked for 3 years. So getting back into the mindset of being a student was so different. I feel like this Howard prepared me a lot to excel in grad school. Like I would be sitting in the front seat, raising my hand like, you know, like it was so exciting to be a student again. So I really, really enjoyed that. And I feel like now I know, you know, that I'll take it more serious. I think undergrad was just not enough time with me learning my specialty. It was also a lot of finessing undergrad, you know, trying to do what you got to do to graduate, you know. So I feel like this is the time like I'm investing in myself, you know, to take myself to the next level and learn more and expand my skills.
Yes, and I feel like sometimes we lose that touch of like the desire to learn and the desire to grow. Like once we get into like that work kind of environment, we forget like the joy it is to learn like a craft.
Yeah.
But since we're on the topic of full time, like I know you have a bunch of experience, but before you really got your first full time job, like what was your internship experience like? And most importantly, what was it like to transition from an internship to full time? And whether it was a paid internship or a non paid internship, how was that transition also regarding like the actual pay? Like, how were you able to navigate that?
Well, I'll definitely say, well, one, I always had a paid internship because if you unpaid, that's slavery. Okay. So I was never going for the unpaid internships because one, I just knew that I deserved to be paid and like, I'm just wasn't going to work for free. That just doesn't make sense to me at all. Like, what's the motivation? You know? So, I would definitely say my internship experience, I interned, at a few places in DC. I definitely like will say the places that I worked at in DC, some were very small and boutique, similar to agencies that I've worked at full time now, and then others were huge, large, like top 3 PR firms. And I think the difference in being an intern is really like no one expects you to know anything. Like they kind of expect you to like just, you know, be there. And there's just not as much pressure or responsibility that you have like being an intern. But once I transitioned into that full-time role, once I transitioned into that full-time role, it was just like a whole different ball game. Like everything switched just because I really didn't know what to expect. And I had it, I would say I transitioned in a way that was easier because I went from working I got my first job in DC before I moved to New York, and that job was like an office coordinator position in a PR firm. So there, I was kind of able to see what they do. I was able to sit in on meetings. I was able to like kind of ease myself in, but I was still like doing the office coordinating stuff, you know, running the day-to-day operations of the office.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
it sounds like it was helpful.
It was until a certain point where I got tired of it, and I'm like, well, I'm not here to just order the lunches, you know, like I didn't graduate for that. So that's when, you know, I was like, all right, that's when it was time to move to New York and really take my career to the next level.
Yeah, and like, what is the whole process of like getting that first full-time job? Like, because something I've been learning a lot from people who are like more experienced is that like, you know, they were saying things like you have to know what you want from the position. You have to know what you want from a certain company. You have to know like why you're getting a certain job. Like it was just so much more than just like, okay, I'm working now. I'm working a 9 to 5. Like there's a lot that goes into trying to make the most of like a job or a position. So like, were you thinking about these things when you were trying to get like your first gig, or was it just like I need to?
Well, you know, it actually, I remember literally graduating. So I graduated from Howard. I was so excited. And I think I came home back to Houston for like maybe 3 weeks. And then I was like, all right, that's it. And I'm just about to set up all these interviews. So I put myself, while I was in Houston, I was setting up interviews in DC because I was getting ready to go back. And I probably set up about 5 interviews that next week. And I was like, one of these jobs is gonna be it, and I'm gonna take it. And that's really what I was just focused on, being employed, you know, and working somewhere. So I mean, I had of all the interviews set up, I ended up, the one thing that I was definitely concerned about was what is the workplace culture like? I think, and I even from the beginning. And you know what? I don't even know if I necessarily was concerned about that in my first role, but I lucked up and got a job that was very, very open culture-wise. Like there was a lot of fun. It was a very diverse setting, which it's different for a lot of PR firms. So it was a lot of people that looked like me, and it was a fun environment. We would have like, I don't know, singing and dance parties. We had couches, we had food, we had catered lunch like twice a week. So there was, I just feel like that I looked up in that role, you know, as far as my first job. It was really cool. They had, you know, puppies in the office. Like, it was a good setting. It was right across from the mall. So after work, I would jet right over to the mall and give me a little outfit. But so it was a good experience, I think. And like looking back, I don't think I've ever had a job that was as cool as that job, you know. But that's one thing I would definitely say moving forward. Now, when I interview now, that's a question I always ask specifically about the workplace culture, and what they're, you know, if they have any people that look like me in leadership, you know, because that is very important, I think, to like the matriculation for sure of us. And then also, like, the thing is with their culture, you have to do a bit of your own research, because just like you could say whatever you want to say in an interview, they could say whatever they want to say in an interview. You know, so they will sell it to you. Exactly. So you just really never know. You really don't know until you know. But I think there's steps you can take as far as like making sure, maybe even reaching out to people on LinkedIn who you see work there. That's exactly what you know, like reaching out to people on LinkedIn who you see who have worked there, or people who are currently working there who might be in a role similar to yours, or maybe a different department, or just trying to find any way you can to connect with someone who works there, just so you can get that insight, because you won't always know, you know.
Yes, that great advice. Literally, like, oh, you don't learn it. I feel like I really didn't learn it, even though like after I graduated, I was going on a bunch of interviews, like. And I would say I'm a pretty strong interviewer, but the idea of like, we're both interviewing each other. Like the company's interviewing me, but I also need to interview them to make sure it's a fit for me, you know?
Right.
Yeah, I think I'm just learning now. I think a lot of people are learning that like, you have to come like, don't come like you're just like an entry-level person, just like begging for a job. Like, no, like you're coming here on the same level as the organization.
Right, because they want you, okay? They called you. Okay.
And since we're talking about great advice, I'm curious as for when you got your first job, like, or any of your jobs, you're still kind of in the entry level space, like, actually specifically the first one, did you negotiate your salary, and what was your mindset regarding like pay and negotiation? Like, did you think about that stuff? Did you learn about it in college? Like, what was that whole thing about?
You know what's crazy is like my very, very first job, I didn't negotiate because I was just happy to get a job. And I was happy that I thought they were paying me well for like having literally just graduated a few weeks ago. So I was like, oh yeah, like I'll take it, you know? And so I didn't negotiate at all. But that second job that I took when I moved to New York, I definitely I definitely negotiated, and it's crazy to even think about because I negotiated. I didn't necessarily negotiate for salary because it was a lateral move, but I negotiated for relocation because if I'm gonna move from DC to New York, like I'm gonna need some assistance, and also it helped to have the HR coordinator like on my side and help me out with that, and was able to grant it. Like I think that's really unheard of for an entry level person to get a relocation bonus, you know, at the entry level, especially when there's so many other people who could, I guess, easily get the job or take the job in that city. So I was very grateful for that. And had it not been for that, you know, shout out to April. I know you know April. Shout out to April. If it had not been for her, like pushing and saying like we want her and like help her out, help her get here, I don't think I would have even ever moved to New York. Like if they would have said no, we can't help you move to New York, then I wouldn't have moved, or I wouldn't have moved at that time. So I'm definitely grateful. Like that was one of the pivotal moments, and I will always like be forever grateful for her. And I still keep in contact with her, still use her for references and all that stuff. So yeah, I definitely that second time I negotiated for sure. And now every time after that, I definitely negotiate because if you don't ask, like all they can say is no, and really they shouldn't say no, especially if you do your research and you can prove why you know you deserve that amount. Like they shouldn't say no. Now you shouldn't be unreasonable, and you also don't want to like price yourself out the box. And then they're like, okay, well, she's doing too much. But you know, you definitely want to be within reason and then be able to back it up. You know.
Yes, absolutely, sure. Exactly. And what kind of advice specifically regarding like things such as like workplace culture or having like an HR who's in your corner or like negotiating things that might not be the salary specifically, like what other pieces of advice do you think people who are like about to transition out of internships or who are like right now applying to like full-time jobs, what are those other kind of like things that aren't really said, like points you feel like you'd want to share?
Yeah, I would probably say, if anything, once you are, you know, having those follow-up interviews, or if you're at the point where you're like about to accept a role or even going into the company, I would definitely say getting cool with the HR is helpful, especially if you're in a smaller firm, for sure. Also, just like knowing what you bring to the table. Okay, so knowing why you're there. I think for so long, especially as a person who was coming in entry level, as a person who was coming into firms, being the only Black person, the only Black, and you know, you have to code switch, you know, and you have to put on this face and you have to be someone else, you know, that you're not, especially when you're, I mean, let's call it like you're literally in a room full of white people, you know, and so you have to try to put on this voice and carry yourself in this way. And, you know, can't switch my hair too much because then they're going to ask me all these questions. Did your hair grow overnight and all of that? Like, no, you know, so it's just, I think for a long time, it took me learning to like appreciate my differences and why I was there versus trying to like fit into their mold and trying to talk about Netflix shows that I had no idea about, that I didn't watch, songs that I don't know, people that are, you know, movie stars. I can't relate. I'm sorry. I can't relate. But, you know, to have to put on that face, you know, or try to do that can be exhausting for sure. So I think knowing that and understanding that they hired you because of your differences. You know, they want you to bring your full self to the table. And I think learning earlier, sooner than later, that it's okay to be yourself at work, you know, and that's something that I'm learning and working and growing into every day. But I think like this last position really helped me just be more comfortable. I think, and it's also, I think, a maturity thing, like maturing in your career. Like as you start to like learn more and get more comfortable with what you can do. Entry level, we're so like, oh, I'm still learning. I don't know where I fit in. What's my place? Like, who am I? You know, so I think as you grow beyond that, but just know, you know, and keep in mind that you were there for a reason, for a purpose, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you hit on so many things.
Did that answer? I was like, I feel like I went all over the place with that, but
no, you hit so many things. And before I get into my next question, like I think what you said that really resonated with me is like being yourself at work. I think, like even though I'm not in like I'm not currently working in like a certain company or at an agency, or I'm not working like full time anymore. It was so hard for me. That was probably like the biggest struggle I had in my career, is like really feeling like I can come to work as myself, not think too much about it. Like I don't have to question myself. I think, and I'm curious as to how you did it, but like I know for me it was just hard feeling like sometimes I felt like I wasn't good enough, or sometimes I felt like out of place, and sometimes I felt like, ooh, I don't want to F up because, you know, I don't want to seem like I'm incapable.
You don't want to be that one, right?
How did you get through that?
Girl, God, okay? Because it would be times where I would literally be like, I would have to just go to the stairwell, you know, get myself together, might drop a tear or two, because it's very frustrating, you know, to feel that way. And like, especially to feel in those settings, like you can't really talk to anyone, you can't really tell anyone, because then they think you weak, or you know what I'm saying? There's so much that comes with it, and you can't carry it all, you know? So for me, I think it was crucial to have that outlet, whatever that is. So for me, that was working out, and I got like super into working out, and I was like at the gym every day, and that was really my release, and that was my way of like taking out the stress of work, because it was stressful. But also it also helped to at least have like one friend at work, you know, even if you don't know, you could trust them all the way, you know. But it definitely helped to have one friend at work, you know, at least to like be able to kind of discuss things or kind of vent to, and someone who knows, you know, what you're going through, or, you know, knows the characters and knows the whole situation and all of that. So that definitely was helpful, for sure.
Something I'm learning that my older sister always tells me, or other people tell me, it's like to have an ally. Like you need to have someone who can vouch for you in some way.
Right.
So like for you it may have been like your peer or like an HR coordinator or someone, but it is important to have that, because you don't want to feel like you're miserable. Now, kind of in the same
right.
You have your first position, or your first couple positions. How do you make the most out of it? Like, and this is kind of what I've been learning recently. Like, how do you make sure that you're learning, you're developing at the pace you want? If your plan is to only stay there for 2 years, 3 years, like how do you I don't want to say use the job, but how do you gain the knowledge and gain everything you need from a certain position to like continue progressing in your career? What does that look like?
I think for me specifically with my first job, I would say like, or my second job, I guess, I knew that I did not want to be there long. Like you can tell off rip if you're gonna like love a job, I think, or not love a job. So I knew that I wasn't gonna be there for long, but I knew that there was so much I had to learn before I could really move anywhere, you know? And so for me, one of the great things was that my job was very, very, very professional development heavy. And so they offered a perk of giving you a stipend of money to go learn, which is, you know, what I wanted to do, or to go to events, or to go to anything that was work related, and they would pay for it. So I think taking advantage of things like that, because me just doing that, it was definitely my start at that job that literally got me so acclimated into like the New York PR community, like as a whole. And so from there, like I've been able to have so many other opportunities open up and meet so many different CEOs and directors and become the youngest board of directors for PRSA in New York, which was, you know, that's like all started from me like taking a chance, you know, and being active and like whenever there's like, hey, we got this coming up, does anybody want to go represent the company? Me, sign me up. You know, like anytime that I could do something to network and meet other people and like find a way to, you know, put yourself out there, that's what I would do. You know, so I think that was definitely a way that I took advantage of that. And that to this day still is with me. I'm still very active. I'm still like leading in PR and PRSA. So and I'm actually planning, and because of that, like it's literally all a snowball because now I'm coordinating the 2020 conference, which it was an in-person conference, but now we're virtual. But it was, you know, it's a conference that happens every year with over 200 PR and communications professionals. It takes place at NYU, and it's a big deal for the industry. So to be able to like go from just attending an event and starting to meet people to now they put me in charge of planning the whole thing this year, you know, in just such a short time. And all of that started from me volunteering, you know, to go and take advantage and, you know, get involved. So I think anytime a job has their little work perks or things like that, take advantage of that stuff because they want you to use it. And that was, I think, what was different about that role is they really wanted you to use it and they wanted you to grow professionally. Versus some companies, like they kind of have stuff, they don't. They might give you a mentor, they might give you a buddy or something like that. But I think that job really helped me go forward, you know.
Yes, for sure. Yes, put your hands up. Yeah, what you're saying is so fact. Like, sometimes you gotta look in the handbook and see like what kind of little perks they offer, but like those are the things that are gonna kind of like get you developing like at a faster rate outside of like your standard, you know, work from the day. So yes, you hit the nail on the head. And now I know you're like super network heavy. I see me speaking on events on LinkedIn. I see you post pictures of you doing all that. You stay busy. So I want to know how important, I mean, it is important, but I want you to like emphasize how important networking is, but also like peer-to-peer networking, like what I originally did with you, like hitting you up on LinkedIn and being like, hey, like I have another like entry-level PR person, like help me, you know, like
right
is networking.
Oh my gosh, it's so crucial. And that's why like when people don't like to network, especially as a PR person, I feel like then you're in the wrong profession. Okay, because you have to be able to like talk to different people, especially if you are the person, you know, eventually in charge of representing a brand. You need to be comfortable speaking to different people about your clients, you know, about what's going on. And so, I mean, networking, I personally love networking, but I also love meeting and talking to new people, which is why I went into PR. But it's very important, I think, and that's why I started to host the different networking events just for other people, other entry-level people, and people who just are looking, you know, to find out more and meet new people in the city, to create those events and those spaces for them to come together. Because that's what, I mean, really, I feel like that's what New York is all about, number one. And number two, I wanted to find a way, because I was new to the city at one point, you know, to just kind of create my own community and create my own group of people that I could start meeting with and talking to and discussing business projects and ideas with. But it's so important because you just never know who you're sitting next to. You never know who you're talking to. You could be riding on the train with the CEO of some, you know what I'm saying? You never know, you know? So I think it's important to, one, just always carry yourself in the best light that you can, you know, represent yourself the way that you want to, but just to always talk to people. And you really, like, your next opportunity, like, you're only one person away from someone who could change your life, you know? So you really never know who you're talking to.
Absolutely. And like I said, like, I forgot the word. I don't know if it's vertical networking or horizontal networking.
Yeah, it's horizontal networking.
Horizontal, like looking to the people who are to the right and
right.
who are in the same, you know, space as you, who have a similar experience.
Because those are the people that you're going to go up with, and you will see them again at the top. You know, so don't only be focused on who's above, but right, like you said, the people next to you are just as important. So I'm definitely, taking advantage of that with being in grad school again.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And what do you think has been like one of the biggest challenges being an entry-level professional?
Oh, girl, where do I start? Let's see. Like, I would say within the PR industry, there is so much work put on the entry-level person, okay? All of the work, almost all of the work, I'm not saying all, but almost all of the work falls at the bottom, and it's literally up to us. It can become a weight, and it, for us to really carry that load, especially when you're like, why they got me doing all this work? Like, people don't understand. I don't think people understand how much work PR actually is. Like, I feel like they see this glamorous version, like they may think of like Samantha Sex in the City or something. Like, it's like they don't understand the hours it takes to like build a solid media list, to like write a perfect press release, to write a perfect pitch, to find to find the right reporter, all of these things, right? And not to mention reporting, right? So now that you've done all the work, you got to report and show how you're going to show it to the client and prove your value. Oh, yes, right. We know. Yeah. But like literally, and I speak to you about this, and I have a few other mentees that I do like monthly check-ins with. And one of the common things that they all talk about is feeling overwhelmed, feeling like, oh my God, is PR even for me? Because there's so much that you will start questioning. Like,
I surely did. We had a conversation. I surely called Kennedi, and I would be borderline on tears, just letting her know how tough it's going on.
It can get really frustrating. It can definitely get frustrating. But I think for like that job, and just in general being an entry level, it's taught me so much on like prioritization skills and time management. So like in PR, everything is always everything is a priority for everybody, and every client needs this right away and all of that, right? And so I think being able to like understand how to prioritize your priorities, and like aligning with your team, and really the key thing is over communicating, because a lot of times we get so overwhelmed. We're trying to finish everything on our checklist, but then you get an email at 5 o'clock, you know what I'm saying? So there's then now everything else got to go out the window. So it's like being able to communicate, especially with the people who you're on the account with, like, hey, this just came up. What should I do about this? Or saying like, hey, it's 2:30 right now. I don't think I'll be able to get to that. So being able to really like prioritize, and then also communicate where you are, and I think that was the thing, because a lot of times we feel like they should know how much work I got on my plate. Don't they see all this work they giving me? Don't they? You know what I'm saying? Like, we think that they just know, but they don't. And also, if you don't say nothing, they think that you're good with it, So sometimes you got to be like, hey, this just has to go till tomorrow. I can't do this today, and that is okay to say that, versus spending any late night in the office, which I did, but that was also a bit of me procrastinating as well. I would take responsibility, but like I would stay late a lot, just trying to get work done, just trying to make sure I'm like keeping my head afloat and above water,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head regarding like over communicating, because like again, this is not it's not really like a skill, not even just in PR, but just in general, like being able to communicate like where you are in your projects for any industry. Like, you have to say like someone said in the comments, like you have to put your hand up, you have to say something when something is not right. Again, something I know I struggled with a lot was like over communicating. I always thought I was communicating enough, but I guess it wasn't enough. It wasn't
right.
And setting up those boundaries, like you just mentioned, like saying when, okay, like an assignment needs to be pushed to tomorrow. Like, I don't know, like when was a time that you had to do that, or you felt uncomfortable doing that? Because like I said, I know for me and a lot of other people I know, like they don't want to feel like incompetent, or they don't want to feel like like like, oh shoot, like do I even belong in this role? Like, what are some tips or tricks you have like to help people like over communicate or like create boundaries for themselves for like
so one thing, that's a good question. One thing I definitely started to do was keep my calendar updated like to the hour, very very well to the minute really. Because we were our team had open calendars, so you know see what everybody's doing. So I would start blocking off time, like, okay, between, 12 and 1, I'm working on this project. Between this time, I'm doing lunch, but, just making sure that I was like keeping my calendar up to date. Like that definitely helped me a lot. And also making sure that I met with my team, like as things were changing, as things were happening, not waiting till I got overwhelmed or like waiting till like I got to the point where there was one time where we had like a huge launch coming up. I mean, a huge launch, like we had been talking, and like they wanted me by myself, one person, to build out 10 media lists. 10.
Girl.
Okay? 10.
I am true.
Like, oh, it's funny. I hadn't thought about this in so long, but I'm just thinking about this right now. Like, oh my God, I was so stressed. But that was one account. Mind you, I'm on 4 other accounts. Okay. So like I had other things to do for them, but we had this launch coming up and I was in charge of dealing with the meetings. So I'm like, surely somebody else is gonna jump in. Surely somebody else is gonna help. And that did not happen. And it gets to like the night before, and I kid you not, I'm at the office till like 12 a.m. trying to like get all these media lists done. And they were so mad because they were like, why didn't you say anything? And I was like, I thought that, you know what I'm saying? I was just trying to do it all. Like I was literally trying to manage everything that was on my plate. And that I would never forget. They was like, don't ever do that again. Like, tell us if it gets to that point. But I didn't think that I could. I didn't even think, too, because I'm just like, I'm gonna get it all done somehow, some way, but I definitely should have reached out for help there or just communicated that, hey, I'm doing all of these other things. Like, I cannot do that. I can't do all of that. Someone can take this list. And that's what ended up having to happen. I think, like, they had to eventually step in because I just know them. But that was like probably within my first few months, or not first, let me say, that was like within the first year of the role. So, I made that mistake once and never again, but it was definitely a learning process, and I know for sure that I'll never do that again. But yeah.
Speak up, please. Always speak up. And I'm telling myself this for any future position I have, girl, please speak up. But now, like you said in the beginning, how you're kind of like on the cusp of becoming more mid-level. Like, what are you doing right now to like transition into that more mid-level role? Like, what are you doing? What are you researching? And like, what's your kind of plans for that?
Yeah, so I think now I'm in a place where I'm transitioning from execution to like strategy. So I think at the entry level, you do a lot of like list building, you do a lot of research, and you do a lot of like pitching and, things like that are tactical. But once you start to move into like that mid level, you're more on the strategy side. So, and that I'm just trying to stay up to date with all the trends, making sure that I'm well aware, what's going on with the news. And then even now, and something that grad school is helping me with, I'm like putting together different like plans for clients, and starting to make sure that, I have everything in order. Also, I feel like there's, as far as like going into the mid-level part, you take more leadership. So there was a time where I was not client facing, basically, where I couldn't talk to the client, is what that means. But now it's more so like I'm leading calls by myself. I am going to meet up with clients by myself. So just being able to carry yourself professionally in front of the client and kind of knowing, what that means. So it's like really just going from doing to more so like setting the standard of what you guys are doing and setting the strategy.
Yes. And I know you're going to be amazing at it. Now, basically the whole premise of like the Pay Me What You Owe song is basically saying something that I wish I could have said out loud, like being entry level when I was getting into like the workforce. So like, what is something from work experience, college experience, internship experience that you feel like you wish you could have said out loud, but you never did?
Yeah, I think I don't know if there's something I would have said, but I think what I would have done for sure is like just spoke up a lot more. And I feel like that's why I keep harping on that, because I didn't do that for a long time, and I didn't even know that I could do that, but to like make sure, and I had a good friend tell me like, you are in that room for a reason, like, and you have a voice and your voice deserves to be heard, so making sure that at every single room, I mean, they're going to feel my presence. They're going to know that I have something to say, and that I'm really there for a reason, not just to sit and like silently like, or look or take notes or just, just try to like not make eye contact with anybody or whatever, because when you're like, literally like 20, 22, whatever, and you're in a meeting with all these people who seem so experienced, it can be intimidating. But I think one, like recognizing like no one really knows what they're doing in general, like, and two, like we're all figuring it out, and like us being in a space where you're on a client team, like you are positioned as an expert. If you're in the room, you are positioned there because you know more than the client does, so just being able to like always speak up, always have a question, and I say that all the time to another one of my mentees. I tell him like, ask questions every time they give you anything. Ask a question because they want to know that you're curious enough. They want to know that you are present, that you're in the moment, that you have something to add to the room and to the conversation. So yeah, I would say just speaking up, and it's definitely like, and if that means taking extra time before a meeting to say, here are my questions I'm going to ask, doing that extra research about the client's industry so you can bring up something, looking at the current events and the news of that day and saying, hey, I saw this happen today. What do you guys think about that? Or how is this going to affect the industry? Things like that like can go a long way. And I think oftentimes we don't speak up because we feel unprepared or we feel like we don't know enough. But if you take that extra time, that extra little 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes to prepare something, you'll definitely feel more confident with speaking up for sure. Like,
Kennedi, speaking so much truth. Girl. Right, you're really hitting me like so hard right now. Ooh. But yes, like this was a great conversation, and I can go on forever, but I know Instagram is about to...
I would say, girl, we could go on and on and on.
For real, because you just said so many things that I have directly experienced, and the fact that like you probably worked in the industry probably like a year or two more than me, and you just have so much wisdom. God, I just love it so much. But please tell people where they can find you out, what projects you're working on, and like what you're gonna be up to.
Yeah, so you guys can follow me on Instagram right here at Kennedi Fuller. Also, I'm very active on LinkedIn, so you can also find me there, Kennedi Fuller, first name, last name. And I have some exciting things coming up that I can't yet announce. But I'm definitely, if you follow me, I'll be sharing more about those things later. I'm also in the process of planning a live series for PR professionals during this time, which will be taking place in a few months. I'll also be promoting that as well. Just similar to this, another conversation for us to talk about what's changing in the industry now that everything's virtual and how we're going to do our jobs going forward. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for having this conversation with me. You dropped so many gems that I know the attendees in the audience.
Of course. Thank you for inviting me. I loved it. I'll come back anytime.
Of course. Girl, don't play with me now. But thank you so much. Have a great night.
You too. Thank you, girl.
Bye. Good night, everyone.
Bye.